name is Knudsen, and I wrote How the Winter Lilies Grow. This is the prologue and chapter 1. I have a baby sleeping on my lap, who is absolutely precious, and so I might pause this recording and continue later on if she wakes up. Prologue, a bedtime story, which is perfect for the pajamas. Aradella masterfully dodged the toys that lay on the ground as her mother chased her. Her foot found the cold gaps in the floor between each toy. A giggle left her throat as she ducked under their wooden kitchen table. It wobbled. She had rammed herself into one of the legs. The pain did not bother Aradella as she wriggled herself farther underneath. She turned around and peeked her head out. Aradella eyed the room from side to side carefully as she searched for her captor. Rain pounded against the windowsill as candlelight warmed the kitchen with a glow. It was dark outside. The scent of the tinselberry tea on the table filled Aradella's lungs with warmth when her mother's head poked out. Aradella's shriek resonated in the air as she jumped back and giggled. She scooted back further, daring her mother to follow. But her mother just laughed. The sort of laugh that warms the home and sweeps away exhausted faces. Aradella's mother sat on the other side of the chair as her daughter's hickory and silver hair tingled more from the run. Her mother motioned for her to come out with a smile. Aradella cautiously came out. She jumped straight into her mother's lap and wrapped her tiny arms around her neck. She peeked up at her mother's face. A warm smile greeted her. She was warm and safe. Aradella gave her as tight of a squeeze as she could manage before her mother swooped her into her arms and dropped her onto the bed. The blankets cushioned her drop as she wrapped them tightly around herself. Aradella gave a sweet smile before she repeatedly yanked her mom's arm down, her best attempt to draw her mom into the bed. "Be patient, little snowflake," Aradella's mom gently said, as she picked up the toys Aradella had cautiously stepped around prior. With only one bedroom, it is easy enough to tidy. "Tell me a story, Mom." Little Aradella smiled widely as she squirmed around in her bed. I would tell you a new one, but I haven't heard any lately. Is there any you would like to hear?" Aradella's mom said as she tucked Aradella's hair behind her ear. Aradella hummed loudly. "I like the one with the flowers." "A lot of them have flowers," Aradella's mom said with a slight frown on her face as she searched her mind for the one that Aradella could be thinking of. Aradella watched as her mother struggled to recall the right one and whispered, with her hands playfully cupped around her mouth, "The secret one." "Oh, the winter lilies. It's been a while since I've told that one." "I'm surprised you even remember it." A slight smile appeared on Aradella's mother's face. "I like it because there was a deer." Aradella put her hands by her head to mimic antlers before she jumped to her knees and gave a squeal. "Settle down, little one." "Well, the deer was from a dream I had about the garden, not from the real story I heard from the market," Aradella's mother clarified as she adjusted her sitting position. "You'll still tell the part about the deer, though, right, Mom? Right?" Aradella said as she gripped her mother's arm and laid back in the bed. "Yes, dear, I can do that," Aradella's mother said with a chuckle. "No, Mommy, I'm not a deer," Aradella protested with a shake of her head before she sank lower into her bed. Aradella's mom took a deep sigh as she chuckled to herself and started her story. There exists a flower, planted by the Creator, that can heal even the deadliest of diseases. Its beauty long sought after for its silvery blue glow, minty streaks, and white center. "Does it have sparkles?" Aradella eagerly asked. "I don't know, but it could have sparkles." I'm gonna say it has sparkles like my hair." Aradella tugged at her hair and showcased the silvery bits that shone through amidst her dark brown hair. "All right, dear," Aradella's mom chuckled to herself. "Well, it remains hidden from most, forgotten by some, yet desired by all. Seemingly non-existent in this universe, yet it has remained as mere song and legend." Her mother's voice was soft as Aradella fell down into a sweet dream full of tinselberry tea, winter lilies, and the joy of Kringlemas that was near. Aradella reminisced on how Kringlemas had felt then as she stared around the empty room. It had been a decade since that loving memory of her mother. Her heart whispered a faint sadness. She pushed away the sorrow and resumed working. The room was dimly lit as curfew approached. It was silent except for the boiling pot over a small fire that crackled. The remaining candle wax bubbled with vanilla and mint as Aradella steadily poured it into the few remaining containers. Sweat gathered on her forehead. Her silver brown eyes scanned for bubbles in the wax as they settled into their molds, and she shook out the air. The wax made its way around the wooden wick, and to her dismay, she noticed a strand of hair poking out. Her moon-stricken coffee-colored hair was neatly pinned back to avoid any falling into the wax, yet one strand of her hair had managed to land in the middle of one of the containers. She removed her mitten and snatched it out before she decided that the rest were ready to sell. It frustrated her that no matter how neatly her hair was pinned, her hair always managed to fall in. She arranged the candles neatly on the overflowing cart that stood by the door. Candles pressed against the railing of the cart stacked as high as Aradella could manage to maneuver them. She tidied her cottage and prepared food for an early morning start. Aradella sighed as she acknowledged the pain in her hands for the first time, the tension they held as she flexed them. She massaged her hands and observed the room. It yearned to be filled with joy. It would be a long day tomorrow, but hope for what could be sang in Aradella's mind as she put out the fire. That was the prologue, and now we're going to do chapter 1. Dire Dwarven Deals. Snowflakes clouded Aradella's vision as she raced through the darkness. Her silver and hickory hair flowed behind her. The shadows encapsulated her as she hurtled through the piney branches. She clutched onto the silver locket around her neck. The cool metal reminded her of the hope that plummeted her forward. Control was within a grasp of her fingertips. Until now, she had been powerless, restrained, seemingly cursed. But that would change tonight. The cold scratched at her brown eyes until they welled up with tears. She slowed down. The snow slowed with her. Her tear-stricken eyes danced around the wooded area. Were the shadow guard lurking? She entered the clearing. One glance at the stars told her that her destination was still barely out of reach. She wiped off the snow that gathered on her eyelashes before she scurried down a slippery hill, eager to recover lost time. She was late to the meeting. Aradella had left later than she had expected from the market, desperate to sell her entire stock of candles. She had sold a lot of them, but not all. Her leather pouch hung low at her waist as she ducked beneath thin, prickly branches. Her grip was tight on it. The pouch was the heaviest it had ever been. Off for tonight. She hoped it would pardon her tardiness. It had to. Her offer was irrefutable, even for the wealthiest of men. It had to please them more. No discouraging thoughts today. She took another step. The wind thundered in her ears while the frost snapped at her face. The combination of the two brought Aradella back to her usual reality, the one where she never saw the night sky, one where she avoided this kind of weather, the reality where she accepted death after death without a fight. But now, for once in her life, she couldn't be that girl or her mom would be gone forever. The loud snap of branches echoed a warning and begged Aradella to turn back. A strike of fear shot through her veins as she rolled around, but it was too late. Aradella flailed her arms as she searched for a solid branch to catch her fall, but they were all out of reach. The ice seeped into her pants and ran up her back as it melted into her. She glanced up. Above her, two bright blue eyes gazed back. Dread plunged into her as the muscled man grabbed her arm and heaved her over his shoulder with a grunt. The grunt offended Aradella more than the fact that she was currently being kidnapped. She nearly screamed. But Aradella's mind raced as she wondered if this was the man she had sent a letter to, the man she had intended to meet, or a true captor. The man wrapped the blindfold over her eyes with a single hand, and it all went dark. She searched for a reason why he would take her in such a manner if he was the right person. He hadn't been dressed in the clothing of the shadow guard, yet he handled her gruffly. The smell of pine and smoke radiated off his fur coat as she bounced on his shoulder. Aradella hoped to use the momentum to escape, but his grip was tight. She bared her teeth, ready to bite him, when a thud resonated in the air. A breeze whisked around her hair as they fell down a hole. He had kicked the center of an oaken stump and jumped inside. The blood in her cheeks rushed to her face as the fire fought with the cold in her veins. The warmth in her body reminded her that she was living as the heat attacked the coldness within her. The man set her onto a hard wooden bench before he ripped off her blindfold. Aradella breathed deeply. She needed to remain calm and assess the situation, even though panic raged through her brain. If this was who she had intended to meet, she needed to be on good terms with him. Yet nothing justified the way that he tossed her up like a doll over his shoulder. Across from her sat a gruff dwarven man with a long bushy beard and auburn hair. He had an empty metal goblet in front of him. Aradella gulped. What had she gotten herself into? Were these even the men she was supposed to meet? Did she stumble into some sacrificial ritual she didn't know about? Sigurd, we have the girl. Fire flickered from the furnaces that surrounded them at the sound of his voice. Maybe she was intimidated a little bit. As she gazed upward, she realized the man who practically kidnapped her had his tough hands on her shoulders to keep her up and steady. Why did you do that? Aradella fiercely yelled to the scruffy men as she ignored the part of her that told her to keep the peace. Anger burned inside her. It overpowered that voice. She had not yelled in the forest, as a shadow guard could be anywhere, but now there was no fear to hold her back. We needed to secure you without making a scene, Sigurd remarked casually. His armor reflected the fire that danced around them and revealed a knotted emblem in the center of his chest that was unfamiliar to her. It had a knot dotted with circles along the edge and then sharp lines around the edge. It appeared to be a language of sorts that Aradella could not read. A quick glance at Leek revealed a different knotted emblem on his armor that was made in a similar style, but his was more geometric and linear than his counterparts. Aradella met their eyes with a fierce determination. Ah, yes, because startling me, blindfolding me, and carrying me like I was a hunk of wood wouldn't capture anyone's attention. Well, you're here alive, aren't you? Sigurd plainly said as he glanced over at Leek. I can explain. First off, the Shadow Guard had trailed us. We lost them, but needed to bring you back here, which was not in our plan, and blindfolding you kept us from a potential ambush if you are against us, and it saved us from revealing our secret location. A proud smile crossed Leek's face as he let go of Aradella to go sit by Sigurd. Leek, stop telling everyone our business plans. Sigurd rolled his eyes as he pressed the palm of his hand to his forehead, clearly disappointed. I don't want her to think that we are animals doing this without a thought. Leek huffed as he sat straighter. Okay, then, Aradella said, unsure of what to make of the situation. Do you or do you not have what I need? Aradella attempted to come across as stern, so they wouldn't haggle her price too high. Aradella had brought a pouch full of gemstones, but she didn't want to spend it all if she didn't have to. First, we will see if we can trust you. Sigurd stood up and reached across the table. He slipped a black ring onto the finger beside her pinky. The metal felt icy against her skin. Aradella tried to shake it off. She was willing to do a lot to get what she needed, but marrying one of these vintage guys to prove her trust was off the table. Stop shaking your hand. Now, do you work for King Draven, or are you conspiring against us? Sigurd met her eyes and asked pointedly. No, I am not working for King Draven, and I'm not working against you, if you are who I think. Aradella squirmed as she spat out that wicked name. That name brought to mind stories of torture that came to treasonous Ceruleans. Aradella did not want to get caught here and find out if they were true. She felt eager to finish this conversation and get out. Sigurd's eyes narrowed and focused on the thick band around her finger. The color shifted from onyx black to a sky blue. The tension in the room simmered as the men liberated the breaths they held and relaxed their shoulders. So the letter you sent mentioned you needed some scalesium, Sigurd stammered as he attempted to appear less intimidating, which was a hard task for a man of his stature. Yes, do you have it? Aradella met his gaze to show that she was here for business, but her hands betrayed her nerves as she unconsciously twisted the ring around her finger. We may or may not have the scalesium you need, but it will come at a hefty price. Sigurd's pace picked up as he circled around her. The hair on her neck raised as the tension increased. She waited for him to speak. Well, what is it? Aradella tapped her foot. This exchange was already longer than she had pictured. Her mind was restless. She was eager to leave and get back home. Aradella was sure that the longer she stayed out, the more likely that the Shadow Guard would notice. She did not know the ways in which the Shadow Guard worked. Aradella only knew that other Ceruleans had been caught, interrogated, and that some had disappeared. Sigurd took a deep breath as he carefully weighed his words. Malik interrupted before Sigurd could speak and blurted, We need you to bring us one of the spark sabers of the Shadow Guard. Me, what? Her brain stopped processing for a second. There was no way she heard him correctly. We have studied your history. Your father served as a high-ranking general under King Draven. You are one of the few who can do this without immediate execution, Sigurd said. Aradella's mouth fell open in shock as her eyes widened. There was no way to disguise her emotions. My dad? What does he have to do with this? He was what? Wait, hold up a second. You want me to confront the Shadow Guard and take one of their precious spark sabers? There's no way you mean that. Also, just because I might not get immediately executed does not mean I would be eventually executed. Confusion, anxiety, and frustration hit Aradella like a wall. She rambled on until defeat entered her mind. Aradella threw down her hands. This wasn't a task she could do. You can do it, and no one would suspect you, Leek offered. Now, if you get caught because you were unwise in your planning, that's on you, Sigrid calmly muttered, but otherwise there's no reason for them to even look at you. Wow, thank you, what every woman wants to hear. Aradella spat out as anger built inside of her. Why don't you guys do it? This was a death wish. We cannot. We have tried and realized that we can't succeed. Leek shrugged his shoulders. Why do you think I will succeed? Aradella raised her eyebrow. There better be a good explanation to convince her. Reason, Sigrid said before Leek continued. You work in the marketplace, which is the best time to get one, so your card won't surprise anyone. You have a strong family history of allegiance toward Draven that others would justify treasonous actions as an accident, or never initially suspect you. Also, you can break through the Spark Saber's enchantment, Leek explained, trying to make his plan seem better. Enchantment? What do you mean? Also, it's always swarmed with guards. The second I try to take one is the second I get arrested and hung for treason. There will be too many of them to stop. I have gemstones. Can I pay you, please? Aradella's voice pleaded. She wanted to appear strong, but that was no longer an option since she felt so weak. She was at the point where she needed to beg. She needed to change her fate. There had to be another way she could get the Scalesium, or another valuable item she could give them. We don't need gemstones, Sigrid grumbled, irritated with her indecision. Aradella's heart stopped. She had been saving it for months. That's why she had waited until the end of the year to reach out. Her plan crumbled before her eyes. She had expected the Scalesium to come at a cost, but this surpassed her highest expectations. She had finally felt free and hopeful coming here, but now she felt heavy and burdened. There has to be something else I can give you. This is my life. I will die if I do this. Her voice broke as she begged. Her breath slowed. This couldn't be real. Panic ravaged her mind. It was so different than she had imagined. You will not die. We will do our best to make sure of that. Sigrid waved his hand as if her concerns had no significance. But you may be banished. Sigrid. Leek's voice was laced with warning. What? Isn't being banished better? Sigrid raised his eyebrows. Not helping, Leek said. Her whole life was here. The marketplace, her house, her mom. And she knew how the rules worked in these parts. A scowl crossed her face. These guys didn't care about what happened to her. They never intended to give her the Scalesium. She was a pawn in some other plan to get the Spark Saber. They knew she would die before they would have to fulfill their side of the bargain. She felt on fire with rage as she glared at Sigrid. I assure you, as hard as a Spark Saber is to get, getting Scalesium would be impossible for you. Sigrid stopped in front of the table, leaned over, and placed his two large hands firmly in front of her. Aradella's heart hardened. She frantically searched the room for any signs of Scalesium. She'd rather steal from them than the Shadow Guard. There weren't many hiding places, as this room was pretty barren except for the furnaces, the table, and the sheets sprawled out in the corner where she assumed they slept. It wasn't here. She could bait them with a fake Spark Saber somehow and take the Scalesium when they came to retrieve it, but it was impossible to replicate such a complicated weapon. If she didn't go to the marketplace to get one, then it would be evident she had nothing to trade. If you do not join us, you will find that this was your only way to get Scalesium, and by then we will be long gone. His eyes met hers directly. Are you in? His face was earnest, but intimidating as it peered into her soul. It seemed to challenge her with a question. What lengths was she truly willing to go? Fine, be off. I will find another way. Who even came up with this questionable notion in the first place? Aradella let out a huff. Frustration gave her the urge to punch someone. Asking a poor girl to do such an impractical task. She had reached out to these knuckleheads because she thought that they would be reasonable to a helpless girl in need. Why would they ask her to do something so ridiculous? She couldn't do it. No way. Plus, she had so many gemstones now. How could they pass that up? She saw Leek slowly look up at her and whisper, Sorry we couldn't make a deal. The men moved away from the table and began to put on their thick, gray, fur-lined coats. Sigrid glanced in her direction. Aradella hoped he had realized the gravity of what they had asked her to do, but instead he said, "I need the ring back," before he grabbed the blindfold that now hung on the wall. Aradella angrily threw the ring on the ground and said, "Here, have your stupid ring back." Leek chased it around the room, looking under different chairs until he found it, and proudly held it in the air before turning to meet Sigrid. "May we pray over your decision and journey?" Leek offered. "No, absolutely not," Aradella fumed. Right as the men reached the door where the blindfold hung beside it, Aradella felt panic enter her heart, and she knew she needed to answer quickly, as this was her last hope. "Stop! Ugh, I will consider it. I will consider your crazy plan, and I will go tomorrow to sell my candles and make my decision then. If I do somehow manage to get a spark saber, how do I reach out to you again? I mean, if I could find out your information, you probably changed it by now. You don't want the Shadow Guard to find you." It was time to appear strong, as if none of this mattered. Maybe she could bargain for more when she got the weapon. If she got the weapon. "You should probably do that," Leek whispered to his friend. "We have our ways of knowing if you get it or not. We will come for you," Sigrid said as he snatched the blindfold and put it over her once again. They hauled her out to the field they first got her from and vanished before Aradella could change her mind. The snowstorm mocked her weakness as she slipped, walking up the hill she once tore through. The wind grabbed at her dark brown hair, tossing it around as Aradella pulled her hood on tightly and shivered as she walked home, no longer free as she had once been. So that was the prologue in the first chapter of my book. The baby has woken up, and she is so cute and adorable. On Amazon, you can purchase the book for ebook and paperback. On Barnes & Noble, you can purchase it for hardcover with a dust jacket, and eventually it will be on Ingram Spark. It is self-published, so it is non-returnable, but I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to the first bit of it. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day. Bye!